All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
Senators, we are very pleased this evening, to have one of our own, the senator from District 6, who will give us the invocation this evening. If we could please rise.
Thank you, sir. Before I pray, I just want to read one verse of Scripture. It says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor seat in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night." Let us pray. Father, God, Lord, and Savior, we thank you so much for what you give us each and every day. We are so blessed that we can call you Father. We are so blessed that we can call you God. And God, we are blessed that you give us all that we do have. But we do have a responsibility as a people. I pray, Father, that we take that sincerely and we take it to heart. I pray that we realize the responsibility that we have. First, it's we honor God, and then we honor country. I pray that we'll continue to honor that and that priority. I pray that you'll bless every person in this room. Father, I pray that you'll bless every one of their family members. And I pray that you'll be with them, and I pray that you'll comfort them. Lord, only you know what they're going through right now. But I pray in your name that you'll give them the strength that they need to make it. So we look to you, Father, and we thank you, God. We praise you for what you have done, but we are going to praise you for what you are going to do. We love you because you first loved us, and we thank you for that love. So be with us today. May we honor you, and may we remember that this is the day that the Lord has made. May we rejoice, and may we be glad in it. I thank you, God, and I praise you. And I ask this in your most holy and precious name. And may everyone say, amen.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the senator stepping in and giving an eloquent prayer and ask that it be journalized.
Without objection, Senator, absolutely. We thank the senator from District 6, who always brings us his inspired words, and we will journalize the senator's invocation this evening. Thank you, Senator. All right, has everyone recorded their presence? Not much, some, a few. 50% of our chairs ain't bad. All right, the clerk will take the call. With 39 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is again in session. Any introductions, senators? Any introductions? Any late night guests? Late afternoon guests? If not, let's jump right in. Look, we have a lot of work to do. We're going to try and get through as much as we can. Hopefully all of it, but maybe not. We'll see. Let's start with message from the House. This is message number 13. Clerk, read the bills.
House Bill 2, Delegate J. Lewis, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Union Dues, Budget and Taxation. House Bill 62, Delegate Charcuterian, Land Use, Public Service Companies, Pollinator-Friendly Vegetation Management, and Utility Designated Pollinator Areas, Education, Energy, and the Environment. House Bill 128, Delegate Crosby, Private Passenger Motor Vehicle Liability Insurance, Enhanced.
Majority move so be considered the reading of the bills. They will be referred to their appropriate standing committees. We've got another message from the House, number 14. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 292, Delegate Patterson, Child Care Providers Registration and Licensing Exemptions, Education, Energy, and the Environment. House Bill 404, Delegate Feldmark, Property Tax, Local Homeowners Credit Supplement, Limitation on Combined Gross Income, Budget and Taxation.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. Let's start with the, we don't have the Chair of Executive Noms. We've got a special order that I think had an amendment. This is special order number 31. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 765, Senator Carter, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages Class A, 7 beer, wine, and liquor license. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question is on the adoption of the favorable report. There may be a amendment on this one. Chair recognizes the bill sponsor.
Mr. President, thank you. I have an amendment.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I just want to make sure you had it. Let me adopt the report quickly. Okay. A question is on the report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. The senator has an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the amendment to the bill, somehow it was left out of the final print, deals not only with the Frederick Road corridor, but also adds in the Cross Keys licensing, marketplace licensing. And so it should be being passed out now, but it basically extends the term for the licensing from its current term to 24 months. So it's just an extension of time. So I think it's a friendly amendment, and it's the way that we thought the bill was anyway. So I asked to add the amendment. Thank you.
All right, senators, move the amendment. From the committee, floor leader.
Yes, Mr. President, we'll accept this as a friendly amendment.
All right, friendly amendment. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 765 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's see. Let's start with this, education, energy, and the environment. This is report number 24. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 791, Senator Elfreth, Primary and Secondary Education, Public School Employees, Job Duties and Salaries, favorable to amendments. Chair
recognizes the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill generally aligns the salary requirements for certificated public school employees who are not eligible for salary increases under the blueprint for Maryland's future due to their subject matter not having a national board certification standard, by establishing an alternative high-quality educator credential, as further specified in the bill. Initial potential salary increases take effect as early as fiscal 2024, subject to approval of the career ladder by the Accountability and Implementation Board. Further, by July 1st, 2026, the minimum salary for all certificated public school employees must be $60,000. The bill also alters requirements related to the career ladder for educators by 1, altering the classroom duty and teacher activity requirements for an assistant principal, and 2, repealing the requirement that a local board of education select a distinguished teacher or professor, distinguished teacher, to write curriculum, assessment items, and model lessons. There are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical. The second amendment strikes a provision of the bill relating to salaries, increases, and enhancements, clarifies the instructional duties of an assistant principal on the career ladder, and provides for the construction of a certain provision of law, and clarifies that a requirement that a county board of education must select certain teachers on a career ladder to write curriculum, assessment items, and model lessons only apply after the career ladder has been well established throughout the state as determined by the Accountability and Implementation Board. Good God Almighty. Oh, that's it. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and a favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the 2 amendments? Without objection, the 2 amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 791 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to budget and tax. This was one we didn't get to this morning. This is calendar number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 116, Senator Benson, Property Tax, Municipal Corporation Business, Personal Property Tax Rate Alterations, favorable for amendments.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have all kinds of systems in place to protect the financial viability and responsibility of our state government and our local governments. One of them is that municipalities and counties have to submit annually audited financial statements to the Department of Legislative Services. Over the years, we've had a number of municipalities who have been late. Most of them get them in on time, but there's been a pattern, in some cases more than 1 year. So we're trying to deal with that issue in particular. So one of the things, the first thing the bill does is it says that they only get 80% of their state aid if they don't get until they get their report in. That's number one. Number two is, because we have a very small number, actually one outlier among municipalities who has a personal property tax rate that is all out of proportion to what the counties do and all out of proportion to what the other municipalities do. This sets a cap of $3.75 per hundred of value on the personal property tax rate. And then finally, it requires the city of Seat Pleasant to hire an independent auditor to do an audit back to 2019. They've had considerable financial turmoil there, and to get an independent audit. And that's what the bill does. The First Amendment is technical. The second creates the penalty provisions for delinquent filings. The third sets the maximum tax rate. And the fourth requires the independent audit. Move the adoption of the amendments and the favorable report.
All right, further moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the 4 amendments? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question?
Mr. President,
yes.
I have an additional floor amendment.
All right, let's do it. We're going to do the report really quickly. On the report, on the amended report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Senator has amendments. The pages will collect and distribute the amendments. Give us just one moment until you get into the computer, Senator. As we wait, Senator from College Park, good win today. Nice win.
Amen.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Yeah, basically, this just clarifies which state aid we're talking about. It's police aid, highway user aid, and disparity grants. Move the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 116 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 239, Senator Feldman, State Employee and Retiree Health and Welfare Benefits Program, Domestic Partnerships favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the capital city as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 239 requires that the provisions of the State Employee and Retiree Health and Welfare Benefits Program that apply to spouses must also apply to parties who have entered into a domestic partnership. Mr. President, I'm happy to read the definition in current law of domestic partnership for anybody who's curious about it, but you can also look it up in Section 6-101 of the Health General article. There are no committee amendments. The committee vote was 12-1. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 239 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 310, Senator West, Natural Resources Black Bear Conflict Reduction and Damage Reimbursement Fund use is favorable with 2 amendments.
That's a funny one. Chair recognizes Senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, our former colleague from Western Maryland used to tell us about all the issues we had with black bear out in Western Maryland, the damage they did to the communities, the farms, the homes. So, this bill's come in and looked at, hey, how can we deal with that, mitigating those issues? And what it is it's a fund that allows the governor to put money into it to deal with mitigation techniques, ways of being able to kind of keep bear away from certain areas and just, help Western Maryland with it. There are 2 amendments. The first, I'll read it real quick, requires a 10% of the annual appropriation to be used for the black bear damage reimbursement. The second is up to $5,000 of that 10%, and the second actually changes it from a requirement to an authorization of the governor putting in $50,000 for this. The second amendment deals with the title. We looked at it in committee and we thought about conflict reduction. In today's world, society, people are mad at each other. We're always talking about getting people together, conflict resolution, conflict reduction, and sitting down talking it out. If they do, maybe at the end they'll shake a hand and maybe they'll even hug when it's over. We as a committee said, we shouldn't call this conflict reduction, so we changed it to, what did we change it to? Mitigation. Because that's what it is. We're trying to mitigate it. We just don't want people to kind of think that, hey, you know what, conflict resolution, conflict reduction, maybe we can sit down with a bear on the front porch, have some sweet tea, talk it out, stop killing my chickens, and, you know, shake hands and maybe a bear hug at the end. So with that, Mr. President, I move favorable on the 2 amendments in the bill.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Floor Leader. The Floor Leader moves the 2 amendments in the favorable committee report. I did think that when I saw conflict resolution between the bears. All right. All right. On the amendments, any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 310 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 493, Senator Carrozza, Commission to Study Trauma Center funding in Maryland. Favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the Senator from District 7 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So colleagues, we're going to take a quick trip down memory lane on trauma. Maryland, we're proud of a lot of things, but I can tell you the one thing we should be most proud of is our trauma system. Quick history, you know, Dr. R. Adam Cowley started the trauma system in 1959. He was the first person to come up with the idea. He got money from the U.S. Army to come up with a trauma center here in Maryland. Over the next few years, he kind of really studied that, looked at it. He looked at how they dealt with the soldiers that were getting wounded in Vietnam with helicopter transport. He was the first doctor to come up with having patients heliported to the hospital. In 1972, he met with Governor Mandel and got an executive order to create the R. Adams Cowley Shock Trauma Center. We are the first and the only one in the nation to have that. And I call it a hub and spoke. If you think about our trauma center, no matter where you are in this state, whether it be Crisfield or Cumberland, if you're injured bad enough, you could be taken to a level 3, a level 2, or a level 1 trauma center via helicopter. You could be there within 1 hour if need be. That trauma system is under a lot of pressure right now financially. It is, unfortunately, with reimbursement rates, with the cost of providing health care. If you look at what happened during the COVID crisis with people, with nurses, you know, we're going to the private sector and coming back on contract. It's all of our smaller regional trauma centers are in serious trouble trying to come up with money to be able to keep the doors open. You know, we talk down here about the seriousness of bills. This bill truly is about life and death. It deals with all of our trauma centers, which again, should you be injured bad enough, you go to your local hospital, they could say, hey, you know what, we're sending you downtown to Baltimore. So with that, Mr. President, we put together, the sponsor put together a task force to look at it. The task force is serious. We need to do it. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of it. But there was one amendment. What it did was it changed who's in charge of it. So it took it from the Department of Health and gave it to MIMS and the hospital MHCC. They're going to co-sponsor or co-lead it. So with that, Mr. President, I move favorable on the amendment and the bill is fine.
Thank you, Senator. Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 493 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 501, Senator M. Washington, Libraries Aging Infrastructure Capital Improvement Grant Program established. Favorable 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the capital cities of Florida.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, another essential piece of our communities are libraries, many of which were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and we all have them in our communities, and they all need a refresh every once in a while. This body, starting in 2008, began dedicating state funds, at first $5 million in a competitive grant across the state. We raised that just a few years back to $7.5 million of mandated capital funding to be spread across our libraries, matched by our locals. What this bill does is recognizing that there are tremendous needs, particularly not just from an infrastructure perspective, but also that libraries of the 50s are not the libraries of today. These are true community spaces that serve all of our constituents. And so Senate Bill 501, as amended, will establish the Aging Infrastructure Improvement Grant Program for our county library capital projects. and Enoch Pratt Free Library locations in the Maryland State Library Agency. The purpose of the program, as I said, is to provide funds to address that aging infrastructure and capital needs identified in a report that we received in 2022 on statewide facilities needs. Through fiscal 29, the governor is authorized. It's very important. I stress that we moved in the amendments from a shall to a may. Authorized to include $40 million in the budget for county library capital projects and $10 million for Enoch Pratt free projects. There's a matching requirement established in the bill as well. Mr. President, there are two committee amendments. The first is technical, and the second essentially merges Senate Bill 502 into this bill to include the Enoch Pratt free library system, so merging the two kind of grant programs into one bill. I move for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 501 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 510, Senator Ellis, Procurement Minority Business Enterprises and Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprises Participation Goal Scorecard, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City. Is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 510, as amended, requires the Governor's Office of Small and Minority Businesses to develop a scorecard to evaluate state agencies for their performance. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes to the title, and amendment number 2 strikes provisions related to sub-goals, strikes the prescribed scorecard, and requires GOSPA to develop a weighted grading scale that includes each unit's contributions to making the goals and requires GOSPA to publish the grades achieved by each unit on its website and also report that information to the respective General Assembly. Move adoption of the committee report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 510 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 514, Senator Lamb, County Procurements Minority Business Enterprises Utilization Programs Certification, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 514, as amended, requires a county that operates a minority business enterprise program for the program procurements, and that has a process for certifying MBEs or minority business enterprises for the program to accept as certified for the county program any person that has been certified by the Maryland Department of Transportation for the state's minority business enterprise program. There are two amendments. First is technical, the second adds municipalities to the bill's requirement. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 514 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 518, Senator Quarterman, Tax Sales Revisions, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 518, as amended, allows for governing body of a county or municipality to petition the court to be assigned a certificate of sale for a property or take title of the property under specified circumstances in which the holder of the certificate of tax sale has not pursued or complied with the foreclosure judgment in a timely manner. The bill also authorizes the governing body of a county or municipality to withhold from a tax sale a property that contains a vacant building or structure that the county or municipality would intend to demolish because it is unsafe or unfit for habitation. The bill's provisions related to the assignment of certificates of sale to a county or municipality investing of title to a property in a county or municipality apply retroactively. It must be applied to and interpreted to affect tax sale actions foreclosing the right to redemption in properties that are pending on the bill's enactment. There are two amendments. Amendment number 1 added a co-sponsor to the bill. Amendment number 2 extends the time that a holder of a certificate of tax sale has to comply to 105 days, after which the county or municipality may take action. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 518 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 521, Charles County Senators, Charles County Property Tax Credit for Volunteer Emergency Responders, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Charles County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 521 authorizes Charles County to grant a property tax credit for real property owned and occupied as the principal residence of an emergency responder or an unmarried surviving spouse of a deceased emergency responder if the federal adjusted gross income of the emergency responder or the unmarried surviving spouse for the immediately preceding taxable year is $250,000 or less. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 521 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 866, Senator Zucker, Special Vehicle Registration Plates, Chesapeake Bay Trust and Maryland Agriculture Education Foundation, appropriation, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 866, colleagues, if you remember, actually the gentleman from District 35 last week mentioned when it came to the Chesapeake Bay Trust and the Maryland Agriculture Education Foundation, the Senate last week unanimously passed the Maryland Heroes license plate, which establishes a license plate in the likeness of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. And at the time, it was asked what would happen if the Maryland Agriculture Education Foundation or the Chesapeake Bay Trust lost revenue. And at that time, I said that the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee was considering legislation on that. Well, this is that legislation. Colleagues, there are going to be amendments, and those amendments were actually stakeholder in my amendments that would go along with what the Maryland Agriculture Education Foundation, MAFE, and the Chesapeake Bay Trust wanted to do. So basically what this does is that in future years, if there's any revenue lost on their plates, this will help keep them whole. The Chesapeake Bay Trust and MAFE are very important to the state of Maryland, and this is allowing them an opportunity to stay in perpetuity without having to worry about the success of their license plates. We're very concerned and want to make sure that they're successful. So with that, there are two committee amendments. The first amendment adds sponsors and changes the purpose paragraph, and the second amendment is taking everything that MAFE and the Chesapeake Bay Trust wanted in terms of how to get their funding right, and it's just basically addressing how to calculate their funding. So with that, Mr. President, I would move the amendments, and the adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure. I think this is on the amendment, not right on the amendment, not the bill. So first off, Senator, thank you very much for listening to the trust. As you know, I'm the Senate appointment to the trust, and they really spend their $3.5 million a year very wisely and very carefully. My concern is now that we have allowed a third license plate, because we only had the trust and the farm, and now we're going to have a third and maybe 4, 5, 6. Are we going to continue to support the trust to the funding that they have become accustomed and have been used so wisely?
Well, a couple of things. One, Senator, I really, really hope that the other bill does become law. That hasn't happened yet. Second is, working with the Chesapeake Bay Trust and working with MAFE, the integrity is pure behind trying to make sure that they have longevity, and we should not necessarily be in the business in the state of Maryland to add more license plates, but whether there's a down year fiscally or if this will at least keep them whole, and I'm expecting that not only will they be supported through the operating budget, but also the capital budget in the future. So it's our intent to make sure that Chesapeake Bay Trust and MAFE are successful.
All right. On the amendments, any further discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader would
yield. Senator may proceed.
Sure. Just trying to get a grasp on what the fiscal note for this would be. Again, we've talked that I think the former speaker just said that it was $3 million. Is that what CBT is getting from the license plates, or is that?
That's what they're getting from the license plates, and then from the actions that this General Assembly did last year with the Climate Solutions Now Act. They're getting an additional $10 million on top of that. So my sense is, I think what you're asking is, well, I think I answered your question. Is there anything else?
Yeah, go further. I just want to make sure if I understood that number. So both Chesapeake Bay Trust and Ag are getting money from the license plates.
The sale of the license plate and the renewal. So
Renewal, right.
roughly it's, say, $3 million for the Chesapeake Bay Trust and about $600,000 for MAFE, and that's the Maryland Agricultural Education Foundation. I'll refer to them as MAFE.
Okay, so that's 3.6 million total between the two. Now we add a third license, and obviously they will generate their own revenue, but now there's a concern that if the 3 million or the 600,000 decrease, that difference needs to be made up from the general fund?
That would, yes, this would be made up by the general fund if they lost revenue.
Okay, but do we know we don't have
We don't
any
know.
idea what it could be?
I mean,
or-
so it could be we don't know. I mean, the fiscal note referenced maybe a couple $100,000 possibly, but
okay.
I mean, it's just all.
It's not 3 million.
No. I mean, well, if it was, Mr. President, if it was $3 million, then that means that the Maryland Chesapeake Bay Trust is not doing any license plates. Like they're not selling any license plates at all.
Okay. I just didn't want to make sure that that's the number that we're looking to make up. We're just going to say that if they see any drop off in sales and revenue from new plates and registration, if they see any drop off, we're going to make up for that.
Correct.
Through the general fund. Okay. What is it?
Correct.
All right.
That's
Thank you very
exactly
much.
right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Any further discussion on the amendments? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 866 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another budget and tax. This is calendar report number 15. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 622, Senator Zucker, Medicaid waiver programs, waitlist and registry reduction, end of the wait act, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 622, colleagues, if you remember last year, this body unanimously passed the End the Wait Act. And what we did through the budget was we put in the dedicated purpose account money, about $30 million, to reduce the waiting list for individuals that were trying to access the autism waiver. We did that through the budget. It was always the intent of the Budget and Taxation Committee to include the other waiver programs that would have been in the End the Wait Act. And in order for them to access that money, we needed to do it through statute. So that's what this bill is. It's allowing the other waiver programs to access the money that's in the dedicated purpose account. This doesn't add any additional money. It's just making sure that those programs and waiver programs that were supposed to be able to access it can. And we also modify it a little bit because we're having a provider recruitment issue and retention issue. So we also want to make sure that there's actually staff to serve the waiver program. So colleagues, there's two amendments. One makes technical changes and adds the committee as sponsors. And the second amendment just clarifies that the existing fund is the dedicated purpose account. So, Mr. President, I would move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 622 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We have a report from the Committee on Executive Nominations, report number 1. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 626, Senator Lamb, Health Services Cost Review Commission, members' appointment, favorable.
Chair recognizes Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill just adds one sentence to the appointments of the Health Service Cost Review Commission, and that's that they will serve at the advice and consent of executive nominations. Previously, they were strictly an appointment from the governor, but now they'll come in front of executive noms for our consent. That's the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Floor leader has moved the report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 626 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to judicial proceedings. Report number 16. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 211, Central West, probation before judgment, probation agreements favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. A probation before judgment is typically imposed by a court on a first-time offender. Under the current system of probations before judgment, a finding of guilt is, albeit briefly, placed on the defendant's record. That brief finding of guilt can really hurt large numbers of people. If someone wants to get a job in national security, the fact that there is such a finding of guilt on his record will prevent him from being hired or could cause him to be fired. For licensed healthcare workers, that finding of guilt on the record could cause a licensed healthcare worker to lose the license or not to be granted a license to begin with. Most significantly, there are a lot of green card holders in this country and people holding student visas. The finding of guilt on the person's record could cause a green card holder or a person holding a student visa to be immediately deported and ruin their lives. So, this bill creates an alternative probation before judgment track. The bill authorizes a court to make findings sufficient to find guilt, but when the court finds those facts, the court may refrain from making a finding of guilt and instead enter into a probation agreement with the defendant. State's attorneys must first consent to the probation agreement. The agreement must specify that the defendant does not admit to the facts offered by the state and pleads not guilty. Secondly, the defendant accepts probation in exchange for the court expressly withholding a finding of guilt. And thirdly, the defendant knowingly and voluntarily waives the right to a trial and the right to appeal the probation agreement. And then after a period of time, if the court finds that the defendant has violated the terms of the probation agreement, the court may find the defendant guilty of the underlying crime and sentence the defendant to the penalty associated with that crime. All the stakeholders who have been dealing with this bill for the last several years are now on board. As of yesterday morning, they all agreed to the negotiated language of the amendment, which I'll describe in a moment, and they all therefore support this bill. There are two committee amendments. The first is technical and adds co-sponsors. The second, the one negotiated by the stakeholders, adds requirements that the state consent to the granting of a probation before judgment under the bill, and that the court find that granting a probation before judgment under the bill is in the interests of the defendant and the public welfare, and clarifies the facts that the facts found under the bill must justify a finding of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The vote of the committee on this bill was unanimous in light of the fact that all the stakeholders are on board. I hereby move the adoption of the two amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 211 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 299, Senator Bidel, Vehicle Laws, Noise Abatement Monitoring Systems, Authorization, Use, and Penalties, favorable with three amendments.
Chair recognizes Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we've struggled for some years to deal with the issue of mufflers, those loud sounds, and I get a lot of constituent requests to kind of find some sort of a solution for it. And I remember the senator from Prince George's County and I worked together to try to find a solution. I think this bill squints toward a solution in the future. So as amended, this bill creates a pilot program in Anne Arundel, Prince George's, and Montgomery County to use a noise abatement monitoring system on state and local highways to record violations of state law governing maximum sound limits of motor vehicles. Any such system must be authorized by the local jurisdiction. The system would only issue warnings for the first 2 years. The system will expire. It's a trial pilot program, so it only lasts for 2 years. after which any jurisdiction which uses the system will have to report to the General Assembly the results. And there are 3 amendments, Mr. President. Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 creates the pilot program in Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Prince George's counties and strikes provisions of the bill providing for the issuance of citations. And amendment number 3 creates the reporting requirement for the Maryland General Assembly and the termination date. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report and the 3 committee amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from District 4 is on the amendments.
Oh, no, I'll wait till after the amendments are accepted.
Oh, has an amendment. Okay. All right. On the amendments, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. On the amended report, Chair recognizes the senator from District 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader would yield for a question.
Sure. Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this law, or what we're passing is authorization, allow them to have these monitoring devices in place. And as I recall, there was no decibel level in the language of the law. I guess that's to be set by each district.
We had this discussion last year, and there's a state law that governs decibel levels, and local jurisdictions have built upon that state law. But there are state standards, and if you ask me exactly what they are, I don't know off the numbers. But
I didn't see them in the bill.
Yeah.
Mr. President, if I could, I'd like to have some time to research that level in the bill, if I could hold the bill.
Sure. So the motion would be to special order the bill.
Special order the bill till tomorrow.
Let's hear from the floor leader.
Tomorrow, are we coming in for a double session, Mr. President?
We are.
The appropriate time, first session tomorrow is fine.
First session tomorrow? All right.
Thank you.
All right, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 252, Senator Carrozza, reckless and negligent driving, death of another must appear, violation, Sherry and Christian's law, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you kill someone through negligent driving, you actually don't have to show up in court at all. You can just pay a fine. This bill changes that and makes sure that a person charged with negligent driving that contributes to an accident resulting in the death of another must appear in court and may not prepay the fine. In addition, the bill provides for a penalty of up to 5 days of incarceration for any reckless driving offense. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical and adds a co-sponsor. Amendment number 2 adds the penalty of up to 5 days incarceration for a reckless driving offense. Mr. President, I move the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 252 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 679, Anne Arundel County Senators, Anne Arundel County Speed Monitoring Systems, Residential Districts, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are 2 jurisdictions that currently have this authority, Montgomery County and Prince George's County. The Anne Arundel County delegation has asked for this authority. It authorizes the placement of speed cameras in Anne Arundel County on roads in residential districts with a maximum posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour. There are no committee amendments. I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 679 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 742, Senator Smith, Vehicle Laws, Manufacturers and Dealers, Allocation of Vehicles, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is simply about transparency. It requires that a system operated by a manufacturer, distributor, or factory branch or its affiliate for the allocation of new vehicles to dealers be reasonable and fair to the dealers, and upon written request by the dealer, a manufacturer, distributor, or factory branch or its affiliate must disclose the method by which the new vehicles are allocated to dealers in the same line and make. In any dispute over compliance with the bill's requirements, the manufacturer, distributor, factory branch, or its affiliate has the burden of proving compliance. There are no committee amendments. I'd move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments or any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 742 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next. That's it. Let's go to Report 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 5, Senator Kramer, hate crimes, civil remedy favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes a person who is a victim of an act that would constitute a violation of the state's hate crime laws to bring a civil action against the person or persons who committed the act, and authorizes the court to award a variety of specified remedies. This bill applies prospectively to causes of action arising on or before on or after the bill's October 1, 2023 effective date. There are no committee amendments. Mr. President, I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 5 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 56, Senator West, courts prohibited indemnity and defense liability agreements favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a difficult bill. It's complicated. In general, under Section 5-401A of the Courts and Judicial Proceedings article, construction contracts or agreements whereby one party indemnifies the other party against liability for damages arising out of bodily injury or property damage resulting from the sole negligence of the other party are against public policy and are void and unenforceable. This prohibition also applies to architectural, engineering, inspecting, and surveying services. This bill expands the prohibitions in Section 5-401A of the Courts and Judicial Proceedings article by prohibiting a contract or agreement with a design professional for professional services from including 1, certain indemnification or hold harmless clauses, and 2, provisions requiring the design professional to defend other parties who are sued for liability for the negligent acts of the other parties. There are 2 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes the provision in the bill prohibiting certain indemnification or hold harmless clauses and adds a provision clarifying that indemnification clauses requiring that a design professional defend an indemnity against third-party claims is not prohibited except to the extent that the clause is against public policy. The vote of the committee on this complicated bill was unanimous. I move the adoption of the amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 56 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 411, Senator Watson, Prince George's County, Judges of the Orphans Court, compensation favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members of the Senate. This bill repeals statutory provisions that establish the annual compensation of orphans court judges for Prince George's County and instead authorizes the county executive and county council of Prince George's to determine the salary. First, it's a local bill. Secondly, it simply says that the salaries at this point will be determined by the county executive and the county council. That's all it does. I move for a favorable report. There are no amendments, and move for a favorable report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 411 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 579, Senator Hayes, residential property exclusive listing agreement, limit on duration, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is amended, prohibits certain service agreements for maintenance, purchase, or sale of residential property from containing certain provisions deemed unfair, abusive, or deceptive trade practices. These agreements may not last longer than a year, and they may not run with the land or bind subsequent purchasers, create a lien, or assign the right to another provider without notice to the property owner. The bill exempts certain service agreements from this prohibition. It prohibits recordation of service agreements prohibited under the Act and provides a cause of action against service providers that violate the provisions of the bill. It takes effect on June 1, 2023. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the body of the bill in its entirety and replaces the Act as described above. I would move the adoption of the amended committee report. The committee vote was unanimous.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 579 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, we've got another judicial proceedings. This is report number 18. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 340, Senator Kagan, Criminal Law, False Statements, Emergency, or Commission of Crime, Anti-Sweating Act of 2023, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Swatting is a terribly dangerous crime. It's when someone calls in a crime that did not actually occur for the purpose of getting the SWAT team to come to someone's house. As you might imagine, it's also fantastically dangerous, both for the innocent person who's in the home, who doesn't know what's happening, as well as the police who have to respond to the original call. So this bill establishes prohibitions related to the making of a false statement, report, or complaint of a fake emergency, or alleging the commission of a crime to a governmental emergency report recipient, in other words, 911 or the police. Violators are subject to a criminal penalty and are civilly liable as specified in the bill. There's 1 committee amendment. The committee amendment strikes a provision of the bill. Mr. President, I move the 1 amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 340 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 487, Senator Waldstreicher, Criminal Procedure Violation of Pre-Trial or Post-Trial Condition, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill makes explicit that a person, including an incarcerated person, may not violate a pretrial or post-trial condition that prohibits the person from contacting, harassing, or abusing an alleged victim, or going near an alleged victim's residence or place of employment if the person is charged with committing certain offenses. Everyone thought that this was already the law. Some judges have indicated some ambiguity in the law, and so this is simply clarifying. There are no committee amendments. Mr. President, I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 487 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 546, Senator Muse, Criminal Procedure Medical Emergency Immunity, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This bill alters provisions related to criminal immunity and sanctions for violations of pretrial release, probation, or parole for individuals who seek, provide, or assist with the provision of medical assistance for medical emergencies involving the ingestion or use of alcohol or drugs. In short, this is what it does. About 3 years ago, we passed a bill, we referred to it, I believe, as the Good Samaritan Bill, which simply said if someone was having, had overdosed and someone called in or tried to assist them, that automatically they would be immune from prosecution. What we did not do was to extend that to the person who was actually the victim of or the one who was actually overdosing. This simply gives them that immunity to both involved. That's what the bill does. There were no committee amendments, and I move favorable on the bill. And
all right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 546 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 708, Chair, Judicial Proceedings, Public Health, Youth Camps, Development, Organizations and Programs, Criminal History Records, Checks, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Hartford County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires the Maryland Department of Health to screen an individual who's seeking to become a youth camp owner, operator, employee, or volunteer if they will have access to campers by obtaining a state and national criminal record history, and as part of that, they'll have to submit their fingerprints. There were no committee amendments. There was unanimous support. I ask for a favorable report on the favorable adoption of the committee report.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Apologies for not letting the floor leader know. I have an amendment that I'd like to add to this bill, but I need to run it by the committee first. Just want to make sure everything's tight. So I'd like to just special order this until the end of the calendar, into the end of the session today.
Sure.
Okay.
Any objections? Any objections?
No objection.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Without objection, we'll special order this to the end of the calendar tonight. All right. Is that the last one on that one? Nope. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 789, Senator Heddleman, Sexual Assault Evidence Collection Kits, Preservation and Storage, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill alters the requirements for the storage and preservation of sexual assault evidence collection kits. It increases from 20 to 75 years the time after the collection of evidence during which a sexual assault evidence kit cannot be destroyed or disposed of by a law enforcement agency. Additionally, by December 1st, 2023, the Maryland Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Policy and Funding Committee is required to report specified recommendations to the Governor and the General Assembly. It does have 3 amendments. The first amendment is technical. The second strikes and alters provision of the bill relating to collection kit storage requirements, and the third adds uncodified language providing for the retention and transfer of collection kits collected before January 1st, 2000, requires a report to the Governor and the General Assembly as specified. It was reported out unanimously by the committee. I move for the adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any further any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 789 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to the layovers. We've got layover calendar number 19. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 90, Senator Kramer, Commercial Law, Consumer Protection, Telephone Solicitation, Stop the Spam Calls Act of 2023. Question is on the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable report.
All right, question is on the 2 committee amendments. Any discussion on the amendments? Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District on the amendments.
Actually, I have my own amendment. I may be standing up too quickly.
Okay, just a moment. On these amendments, the committee amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Senator from the 42nd District has an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the amendment. And Senator, just give us one moment to get it loaded up into the system for all the viewers at home that are following along diligently. Senator may explain the amendment.
Mr. President, this is just a sponsorship amendment.
Oh, did I get on this? Okay, good. Excellent. All right, this is a great amendment.
And you may notice that your name is on the amendment.
That's what I was double checking. All right, Senator moves the amendment. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 90 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another laid over bill. This is calendar number 20. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 610, Senator M. Washington, Primary and Secondary Education, Virtual Education. Question is on the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the two committee amendments. Any discussion? If not, any objections to the committee amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Chair recognizes the minority leader on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could the floor leader please yield for questions?
Floor leader yield. Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This bill is very similar to a bill we debated pretty heavily last year with regards specifically to Section 3 of the bill, which targets the Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium, correct? And we,
well, go ahead.
And through this piece of legislation, are attempting to put them out of business in 2 years. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay.
What you're referring to is actually an accommodation for an existing virtual school that under the requirements under the bill is would not be allowed to form. So it allows for 2 years, which I guess last year it would have been 2 additional years, but for 2 years to come, a total of 3 years to become compliant. And just here, yeah. So.
Well, you say would not be allowed to form. This school is formed and operating. So any changes that you're making to legislation right now is specifically targeted at finding a way to get this consortium out of business. Right?
No, I think as I explained when I laid this out is that everything that is in this bill is about understanding that virtual education, virtual schools in particular, are public schools. And heretofore, there's been very little regulation or standards that apply, given our obligation to assure quality public education and, frankly, to protect taxpayer dollars. So as we developed various criteria, for example, the county, a virtual school principal, their place of business, or the county designation has to be written into the agreement. One of the things we did is that we allowed there to be multiple county boards, specifically because the Eastern Shore Consortium is a very innovative, interesting group, and so we specifically amended current law to allow it to operate. Because actually, truth be told, they're not authorized under the existing virtual school to have been established in the first place. So if we want to roll that back, we can say right now it is completely out of compliance. And if we choose to shut it down now, we would. But we don't want to because there are 300 students that are there. There are families that are relying on that consortium to provide quality education. The other thing that's required is that they have to have access to extracurricular activities, wraparound services, foods. Also, the teachers have to be employed by the county. They also have to provide direct instruction. They have to provide technology and equipment to the teachers, provide technology and equipment to the students. Each virtual school shall have a unique school code that is assigned to the department. A teacher assigned to a virtual school shall have a teacher certificate issued in our state and is authorized under COMAR. There are a number of things so that it doesn't matter what school it is, if they're not in compliance with any of these, they have 2 years to come into compliance.
So all of those requirements that you just stated, they were in place prior to the consortium starting?
Well, the requirement that I said that there shall not be multi-state agreements was in current law. So currently this, multi-county. So that's current law. So currently, under current law, they are out of compliance.
So an education option that is provided to 9 counties on the Eastern Shore. As you mentioned, 321 students, right? In 9 counties on the Eastern Shore.
Right.
The thought of this legislation is they should not be able, Is there an opportunity for them to be in compliance with this bill?
Absolutely, in 2 years, yes. So
But with that-
what's going on is the consortium itself. So if we think about the consortium, and which is a different thing, we don't do that. As I said, an existing law. So actually, the way in which they entered this was not lawful. Okay, so if we want to be strict about it. But, so we accommodate that in the existing law. So if you don't vote for this bill, they will be out of compliance, you know, and not able to form. But if you think of the consortium sort of as a board, and it is itself a nonprofit board that is responsible for contracting. In this case, they contract with a vendor, and in this case, a for-profit vendor, to deliver educational services. So, looking at all of everything that needs to be adhered to, and probably one of which is that it needs to be a nonprofit entity, but that's not the only thing. There are a number of things that would allow it to come in compliance. And if you would continue to read, it does say very specifically in the law that we encourage the consortium to come into compliance.
So let's say they came into compliance with everything that is requested of them that you're saying was not in compliance before, and they remain a for-profit entity.
Well, that's...
You're not going to allow it.
Well, they can't choose a vendor that is a for-profit.
That's how they're operating currently, though, right?
That's how the vendor that they've chosen has to be compliant under law. And the vendor is Apex Learning. Is that correct? It's Apex Learning is the vendor.
Yes.
Yeah. So we as a state have not allowed for-profit entities to operate non-traditional school programming. So remember I described what an administer and operate is, right? So in the legislation, it says you can't administer and operate, but you could buy software, you could do anything, but they can't run the school. Now, Apex is really interesting. I don't know if you know this or not, but Apex was acquired last year by Edmentum. So Apex was in Seattle. They were acquired about 2 years ago by Edmentum, and its corporate headquarters is in Bloomington. Now, Edmentum makes about $185,000 a year, and in a single month, it makes close to $5.7 million. Its total annual revenues are like $500 million. They have 1,000 employees. Now, Edmentum, Mr. President, is owned by Vista Group. Okay, so and Vista Group actually acquired Edmentum in 2020, and it focuses on making investments in what it calls middle market companies in healthcare, education, and financial services. Now, that's a private equity firm in Chicago. So it's not really about having a partner, but it's having a partner whose primary mission isn't profits, but is providing public education to especially communities like those on the Eastern Shore.
Well, that was certainly a lot of connecting the dots somewhere. I'm not sure where that went.
Well, what it is that it's owned by Vista Group, and then Vista Group has acquires a bunch of things. It's got 5 investments, and then it turns out the head of Apex and Edmond aren't educational professionals at all. They're not even in education. They have MBAs and random things, and so we just are now. We're just really interested in making sure that the people who are accountable to our school boards, the people who are accountable to those 9 communities, are closer, and that they're not some private equity firm, in New York City, or actually they also have an office in UK. But.
Caught a few more dots there. Okay, let me ask a question. Do you think the General Assembly cares about student results and achievement?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
All right. Well, then maybe we should be thankful for groups like that that are able to run programs where the consortium in the last 2 years had 83 and 86% pass rates in their programs.
Right.
That's pretty substantial, right? I would believe. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to compare them to public schools.
All right, let's
Oh, sorry.
ask.
I mean,
if we have a question, we can ask the question. The senator will answer the question. We'll go back and forth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would think an 86% pass rate and an 83% pass rate over the last 3 years is pretty substantial and probably outshines most of the public schools in the state of Maryland. Would you agree to that?
Well, what I would agree to is that I'm wondering why, I'm not sure where this is going. We are setting standards for all public schools, and it's not just about a particular school at a particular time. It's really about what our standards are going to be for this, new way, a creative way, a good way of delivering public education. And the data just consistently shows, now maybe using your data, they're doing well, but actually the data from the school system, where we're looking, they specifically did an analysis of virtual program enrollment and the enrollments, in each of the different schools, and I'm not sure your assertion that it's doing so well that we should allow it to violate existing law stands.
Well, it doesn't violate existing law.
They formed a multi...
Senator,
yeah,
please.
Sorry about that.
It doesn't violate existing law, and we certainly could have found a way to grandfather in a consortium that has been successful. In fact, last year's letter from Dr. Chowdhury, who I've not agreed with lately, but I will state what he mentioned here, that as long as virtual programs that originated before the state passed this law is performing above that line, it should be able to continue. Did the committee consider that?
So, Mr. President, the committee considered all of these amendments, and thinking about, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So the committee considered that. The committee, actually, we voted this last year. All of these would be laws today if it weren't for a veto. So we have discussed it.
You discussed allowing as he said, a program that originated before the state law was passed. You evaluated whether or not that should be able to continue.
The committee.
The committee. My apologies.
I'm going to say it again. What the committee did was decide what the rules are, what the standards should be for virtual schools, and made what I believe a reasonable accommodation, and the committee believes, to allow this particular program that is now the only one that has a for-profit operator and administrator continue to operate. And colleagues, just think about there are many decisions that we have to do in closing schools. We close schools when they could be performing really well, but because of other considerations, the school is given a certain amount of time. The students move to another campus temporarily. We rebuild their school, and they come back. So this is similar. This is somewhat the same in that under the law that we passed last year and that I anticipate we will pass this year, this particular vendor is not in compliance. The period, but they're not in compliance.
It is, and you mentioned earlier that they are not in compliance because they're for profit. I mean, that's specifically why this is targeted, right? Because they're for profit. Whether you like it or not, whether the committee likes it or not, and the committee last year said the same thing, that they are targeting this consortium specifically because they're for profit?
Mr. President, I don't recall any testimony to that either last year or this year. Colleagues, I don't recall in any of our conversation at all targeting of any particular school. I do recall that we wanted to set very strong, clear standards that were consistent with traditional public schools, that are consistent with our charter school program, which, by the way, has not had some of the problems that other schools that have gone for. We have a lot of lessons we've learned about for-profit charters, for-profit virtual charters, and the evidence is that if you wanted to maintain close, if you want more local control, if you want all the things that we believe are important for our students, then one of the things, in addition to, one of the things is that it is a nonprofit entity if the school district chooses to hire a vendor to operate and administer its school.
All right, well, you mentioned local control, and I don't want to talk about that because we've seemed to throw that out the window lately with respect to our school boards and what's going on with that. But I do want to mention, of the other programs that are being run, this virtual program that will now comply with this legislation, are any of them not run by a public school system? So other counties
have other counties contracted with a vendor to provide either goods or services or to administer or operate their program? Yes.
And which ones are that? Which ones are
I will
that?
have to get that to you.
On other counties that are doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. Again,
Frederick County.
Frederick County, that's what I thought. Frederick County has contracted with somebody else, but they're a nonprofit. Do they comply with every single other requirement in this bill?
Well, if they don't, they have 2 years to comply.
Where's that in the bill?
That's right above the part that you're focused on, where
number 3 or 2?
Yeah. It says has 2 years that you can, through the fall 2024 academic year.
Is there a reason why they weren't singled out specifically, like the Eastern Shore of Maryland Consortium?
Part of it, in the discussion, there was a concern about that entity, so the committee wanted to make it really clear that that entity was included and that that entity had an opportunity to come into compliance, and also that it would be encouraged to come into compliance, and I would imagine be supported.
Okay. And Madam Floor Leader, I don't know enough about all of the different compliances that you've mentioned to know if the consortium is in compliance with those or not. We all know that very specifically they're not in compliance with one important part, and that's that they're a for-profit, right?
That is one that we know about. How actually, the other is that the instructors are hired by the vendor, the teachers are hired by the vendor, and they're not employees of the school system.
Well, they're doing a fantastic job, as I mentioned, because we're getting 83% pass rate the previous year and 86% pass rate this year. So whether they're hired state employees or not, they're doing an excellent job with the students that are in this program.
Mr. President, I was asked what other parts of the new the standards are there, and I answered that there are others besides being for-profit.
Besides being for-profit. Final question, Madam Floor Leader. If obviously there's been a lot of conversation about this particular consortium in the committee and the vendor that they're using, did the committee try to evaluate or give guidance to the consortium to say, hey, if you meet this requirement, and this requirement, you will be able to comply? I mean,
well, just not to talk out of school, but I remember having extensive conversations with a fellow committee member about that my personal investment in ensuring that the law allowed a time to come into compliance. And also, I remember speaking to a couple of the people who had come to the hearing, saying that I truly believe that there was a path forward. So I've personally, yes, are invested in supporting that.
And these were other criteria besides just whether or not they're for profit or not. The other criteria that they are not meeting currently is what you're saying.
Well, I can't remember all that conversation, except that you asked. I was asked if the committee was willing and did some outreach to express an interest in that consortium remaining intact and providing the innovative, cooperative, blended learning environment that they currently do for their 300 students, that we were very interested in them being able to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure they'll find a way to try to meet the criteria that's required and see if they can do that. And then we'll have a debate next year that they still remain for profit and why they're not going to be able to operate in the state of Maryland.
Well, that would be their choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, on the favorable report, not quite, we don't have amendments yet on the report. Any further discussion on the report before we get to any potential amendments? If not, all in favor? Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yes, I have a sponsor amendment.
Oh, just one moment. Let me
sorry.
do the report. On the report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Let's go with the floor leader has a sponsor amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the sponsor amendment, or what? All right, Sarah makes one.
Thank you. This amendment would add two sponsors, permission to use the sponsors' names, senators' names. I don't have to. Okay. Beidel and A. Washington.
Sarah, excellent. All right, Sarah's moved the amendment. Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there additional amendments to the bill or its title? Yes, Senator from the 37th has an amendment. Senator will collect, or excuse me, Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment focuses on the provision of the bill that was just discussed, dealing with the Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium. Try to say that slowly because I get tongue-tied whenever I try to repeat it. If you look in the bill, there is a 2-year grace period. This amendment would change that grace period and extend it and make it a 10-year grace period. So the grace period would end in 2033 through 2034. I'm grateful to see that there is a 2-year grace period in the language before us. However, this amendment is absolutely positively necessary. It's absolutely positively necessary. You just heard the debate, and I'll repeat some of the high points. The superintendent's comments: all virtual schools should be held accountable for producing positive student outcomes, whether those schools are run by a public or for-profit operator, whether they originated before the bill becomes law or start next year. The results are undisputable, okay? The results of our blended virtual program on the Eastern Shore, last year, 86%, the previous year, 83%. My two children attend school in St. Michael's Public School. And this goes back to COVID. We're talking about a COVID project, right? COVID comes along, parents are told your kids are going to learn at home. Prior to COVID, any mention of virtual education was repudiated. Nobody wanted to hear about virtual education. Absolutely not. We put all this money into our school systems. Those kids are going to school, and those teachers are going to teach those kids. That's how we're going to educate. That's the only way you can get results. You guys, for the body, I don't know if you recall that, but that was the constant. COVID came, and there was no choice. Kids had to learn at home. Some districts fared better than others. All of them stumbled at first. Parents stumbled, students stumbled, teachers stumbled, administrations, they didn't have a clue on how to do this. They didn't even know what type of a program to use. By the grace of faith and a little luck, this group on the Eastern Shore got together and they requested a grant. They got $1 million grant for what? For virtual education. Good luck. You'll never get it done. We don't even have internet on the Eastern Shore. Half of our kids can't even get online. The teachers don't have access to the internet. But we're still going to do it virtually. That's the way it's going to be. You got to be ready for it. So our educators, who are being overwhelmed with all kinds of challenges, took this $1 million grant, which was peanuts compared to what they put together, and they came up with an incredible program. This blended virtual program has been phenomenal. It has been, without a doubt, across the board, hands down, acclaimed by everyone involved. It has been a success. I get that there are issues that were discussed earlier about different criteria, this, that, and the other. That's no doubt. But to just say you have 2 years left and this program is banned and you're going to have to recreate the wheel and go to something that you know or don't even know is going to produce a result and walk away from something that works. You know that old saying on, if something works, don't fix it? Or if something's broke, I got it wrong. You know the saying. You know the saying, right? You have a perfectly good system. So, okay, there are some issues, and I'm not going to dispute the issues. We need to work with our education system so they can meet the goals that we put before them. And the 2-year grace period, which is wonderful, it's a cliff. Okay, they don't have time. Trying to drive education is like driving a cruise ship down the ocean. It takes miles to turn one of those things and stop one of those things. This amendment creates a little cushion. It gives 10 years to give the consortium the opportunity to meet the goals that are expected of them. The schools right now on the shore are really having a hard time. They're trying to meet all of the requirements in the blueprint, right? They're consumed with that. And some of the requirements, they don't know how they're going to meet those requirements. And now they're faced with the specter of having to rebuild this entire virtual learning program, which, by the way, is consistent. It's regional. It's regional. I get it. It's the Eastern Shore. It should be the entire state. If one part of the state gets it, the whole part of the state should get it. But it works, and it works for those counties. So extending this 10 years may seem like a long time compared to the 2 that are in the bill. But I know firsthand from talking to my administrators, they are dealing with stressors in their systems right now like you wouldn't believe. Within their own offices, within their classrooms, within their student bodies. All of them would just say, Johnny, if you just give me a chance, if you just give me the opportunity, we can do what you want to do. Take this program away, they're not going to get another $1 million grant. They're going to get what they get, and they can't throw a fit. That's how that works. And unfortunately, that's not good education. The amendment, to me, is a very reasonable proposition. And along with the amendment and the discussion today, the criteria that were addressed, I know that those criteria will be met. I know the changes or whatever the obstacles are can be addressed, but this is as an important issue in education on the Eastern Shore as any other that we'll debate. And I understand that it really doesn't mean that much if you're not on the shore and you don't have to deal with those superintendents and talk to those teachers. And my gosh, the teachers want it. The teachers want it. So with that, I appreciate your indulgence. I need to remember to ask for a roll call vote. And I know there's something very important I was supposed to say that I missed, so I hope my colleagues will back me up, Mr. President.
Move the
thank
amendment.
you.
Senator, move the amendment.
Move the amendment. Yes, sir.
All right. On the amendment, let's hear from the floor leader.
Colleagues, I'm personally very sympathetic to much of what the maker of the amendment said. That is why in this bill there is a lot of consideration about the expectations and supports for all of our school systems so that they can create quality, fully functional virtual school offerings should they choose. But I am going to ask for you to resist this amendment. For the first reason is that the amendment calls for the striking of the word school throughout the bill, on the first line of the bill, and changes it from a school to a program. And it's a school. So that's first of all just not able to do that. And then also on the merits. So thank you. So I ask you to resist it.
All right. Let's hear from the senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise in very strong support for the senator from District 37's amendment. And I think you can tell with us standing up from the Eastern Shore that this means so much to us. And so I'm appealing to my colleagues to hear us out. Just as way of background, because there's been a lot of facts thrown around, this Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium consists of 9 public school systems on Maryland's Eastern Shore. Back in the spring of 2020, in the throes of COVID, our consortium, with the recommendation, advice, and consent of the state superintendent of schools, began to develop what is called a blended virtual program. That was a blend of synchronous and asynchronous instruction to interested students and families, specifically designing this to address the needs of our students and families in rural areas. I also want to point out, because it was alleged that we were out of compliance by even having the consortium, that this consortium has a waiver for being able to be formed as a multi-county consortium. Some of you know that I am a late appointee to the Kerwin Commission. I participated even before I was a member when I served in the House of Delegates, came up to all of these meetings, and just started attending them because I knew it was going to be the Kerwin Commission that dictated the future for our education with the shared goal of providing the best quality education for our students. I guess I just started showing up so much they decided to appoint me. The blueprint for Maryland's future encourages innovative programs in education. And what my colleagues so aptly described, this consortium worked together on this blended virtual program and this is an equitable solution to many children who are unable to attend traditional in-person learning, regardless of family income, race, or ethnicity. And as you've noticed, we've highlighted this, the results speak for themselves. An 83% pass rate in 122, and in this school year, this semester, it's up to an 86% pass rate. This is working, my colleagues. I also, for more background, just because there's been a lot of information thrown out, that this program was developed in compliance with state requirements. The students stay enrolled in their own local public school. The local schools are responsible and accountable for their students' success. They did a survey of the students and the parents who have participated in this program. 95% of students feel supported by teachers and that they receive good feedback on their assignments. 94% of parents say their child feels supported in the program and they're satisfied with the teachers. 95% of the students feel the student success coordinators in the program care about them and help them be more successful. The student progress is continuously monitored. And the students who are not as successful are provided additional support by their local schools. They're offered additional help during virtual study halls and teacher office hours. It was noted, and we just again want to bring it to your attention, but you do have the current state superintendent in writing stating that pre-existing virtual programs, including those run by for-profit providers, should be allowed to continue to operate so long as, after a time-bound startup period, they are providing their students a high-quality education. We all agree with accountability. We've already proven that this program at 83 and 86% pass rates are making it. There also was a question raised by the senator from District 36. Did we have a discussion about all the criteria? Did we have a specific discussion about the for-profit? We did have a specific discussion about the for-profit in committee, and I offered amendment in committee to extend, instead of just 2 years, to extend it indefinitely, but to tie it to the success pass rates. That amendment was defeated 5-6. My colleague from District 37, I think, takes a reasonable approach. He says, okay, not indefinitely. Let's extend it to 10 years because we understand and we want to make clear, and the state superintendent, the person who runs this program, has made clear, and she is the director of the Eastern Shore Educational Consortium. She says in her testimony, this bill as drafted, with this language, that the ESMAC, Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium blended virtual program, will cease to exist after the 2 years. We've heard other people say, well, you can do this partnership and you can do that. But the bottom line is this program, as it exists now with its successful success rates, will cease to exist in 2 years. So that's why my colleague from District 37, again, coming up with a very reasonable, let's extend it for 10 years. And in closing, you've heard from all three Eastern Shore members of yours. We are asking you, our colleagues, to allow our Eastern Shore virtual program with successful pass rates to continue to exist. And if you think if the shoe was on the other foot and there was legislation to take out and eliminate a successful program serving students and families in your district, you would also be fighting for its very existence. And for those reasons, my friends and colleagues, I'm asking you to support this amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Chair recognizes Senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the amendment, and also as the senator from the Upper Shore, from the northernmost part. This was debated extensively in our committee, as we all heard here today, and a similar amendment did go down by a very close 5-6 vote. I'd just like to reiterate, this is a program that is working for these students on the shore, and all 4 of the senators who represent the shore have spoken on this floor. Now, oftentimes, stuff that comes out of committee, I don't like to get up if it's something we've already debated in committee, but there's a few bills that we feel are very important, especially this one, to the shore, and that's why I rise and urge my colleagues here in the full body to support this amendment. I would encourage everyone to put up a green vote on this amendment. Thank you. And also, as mentioned, I believe the sponsored amendment a while ago did request this, but we would like a roll call.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion on the amendment? Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Just to body, a number of assertions have been made about the success rate, and so I was reluctant to sort of share, but there is a very clear association between synchronous, 100% synchronous vendor-provided teachers that was a result of the school system spotlight created by MSDE, just released in December of 22, which of the 9, so Caroline is 100% vendor provided, Dorchester, Queen Anne's, Wacomico is 67% provider. And in the third quarter of last year, 35% of middle school students failed social studies. In the high school, 33% failed social studies. 26% failed high school science, and 26 failed math, middle school math. So again, colleagues, this is not about targeting a particular school. It's about setting standards for all schools. And the evidence is clear that there is a difference between nonprofit and for-profit. There's a difference between vendor-provided teachers and locally hired teacher. There's a difference between programs. There are differences. And the standards that we are laying out will set the course for how virtual schools will be developed in the state of Maryland. I ask you to resist this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes Minority Whip.
Mr. President, I just wonder if I might ask a question in response for the floor leader on those numbers.
Will the floor leader yield?
Those numbers of passing or not passing, those were the scores for the students on the Eastern Shore that used this service, that this, not used this service, but this service was provided to?
The virtual, this is for a virtual program. This is an analysis of the virtual program, and it was conducted of all virtual programs, and it compared different types of setups. And so those that had setups that had fully vendor provided asynchronous or synchronous scored significantly lower than those that didn't. That's the data. I just pulled out Wacomico just to...
Understood. So Wacomico had a situation where there was about, you said about 30% that did not properly pass science, or something around that statistic?
Yeah, that's what
How did they do in math?
I think I just said the same.
About the same? How does that compare to what some other jurisdictions are doing with in-person teaching?
I think we have a lot of work we need to do in all our public schools to improve. I just raised it because there was an assertion, Mr. President, I raised it because this was presented as an argument to allow a variance, saying that they were doing, better. So that's why I raised the specific outcomes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It sounds like, though, if statistics that I hear in the news these days can be believed, it sounds like even with those numbers, this virtual setup is doing. Obviously, we don't want anybody to not be getting a passing grade, but we understand everyone's a little bit behind right now. It sounds like they're doing way better than what I've heard reported in some areas of our state that do not have this kind of setup, and probably could use a little more strict scrutiny and accountability, like we're apparently giving these folks. So I think this is a good amendment, just to give them a little more time. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just was curious about those scores. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 26 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments to the bill of its title? If not, Senate Bill 610 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to layover calendar number 21. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 555, the President Fair Wage Act of 2023. Question is on the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, questions on the two committee amendments? Any discussion on the committee amendments? If not, any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes Senator from District 1 has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a little bit of a monologue beforehand, so that'll entertain the passage of the paper, sir, if that's okay. So, colleagues, as I look at this bill, the amendment that is getting passed out to you today, it reminded me of game night at the McKay household. So at game night, kids get to pick whatever game they like to play, and we really like the Milton Bradley versions of games, and one of the games that we like to play is Monopoly. And so, fictitiously, we got a new game of Monopoly out, opened up the cellophane, and we started to play. And then we got a letter in the mail from the Milton Bradley Corporation saying we're going to change the rules. But we just learned the game. And my kids would say, you know, Dad, that's just not right to change the rules in the middle of the game. Colleagues, Senate Bill 555, I believe, changes the rules. Now, my amendment tries to mitigate or tries to lessen the changing of the rules. My amendment delays the $15 minimum wage until January 1st, 2025 for small employers. I am a small employer. With those who are 14 or fewer employees, $13.90 would be the new rate effective January 1st, 2024. Now, the rationale that the Maryland General Assembly passed a $15 minimum wage in 2019, it specifically granted small businesses, those with 14 or fewer employees, an additional 18 months to get to the $15 compared to the large employers with 15 or more workers. Because there was an acknowledgement that smaller businesses do not have the same resources that large corporations have for more access to capital, purchasing power, and labor pools. This also will provide a smoother phase-in for these employers who would otherwise need to increase hourly wages by $2.20 at the end of the year when they were anticipating a 60 cents increase under current law. That's more than 250% jump per employee. The current minimum wage for small employers is $12.80. It increases on average 60 cents until July 1st, 2026, when it becomes $15. We're telling these same employers to now absorb a 266 increase in labor costs in 9 months and a full 2.5 years ahead of schedule. Mr. President, I urge the move of the adoption of this amendment because changing the rules 3 years later, my kids would call just not fair.
All right, the senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, first I want to thank the gentleman. I appreciate the sentiments behind his amendment, but I do respectfully ask that you reject the amendment for the following reasons. The bill was introduced because we had some unplanned events happen across this country. So the gentleman referenced the 2019 bill, and as you all will recall, a lot has happened in the state of Maryland and across the country since 2019. The bill was introduced because many of our employees across the state, working men and women, are struggling. They're struggling, as the gentleman said earlier today, to pay for food, to pay for rent. I think he referenced utilities. People need to be able to survive, whether they work for a small business or a larger business. By increasing the minimum wage to $15 in January of 2024, 175,000 families will be impacted, 126,000 children, and 60% of those impacted are women who work for small and large businesses. And the committee also recognized that the state has a commitment to supporting our small and large businesses. Through the Department of Commerce, the state has over $107 million in grants and business development assistance programs, and there are over $40 million that are specifically set aside for small businesses. So, Mr. President, we ask that you resist this amendment so that working families can have resources to pay for the things that they need, and the minimum wage can be increased to $15 by January of 2024 as we amended it in committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those programs that were articulated, really the larger companies have the staff to take care of that. What we're talking about is 14 or less. Colleagues, right is right, and I ask for a roll call, please. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just in support of the amendment, through the years, we've made a number of concessions for small businesses. Obviously, in this legislation, we were able to designate them out, put them on a different path to achieving $15. The paid sick leave legislation that we've had for a number of years, we carved out and a separate area for small businesses as well, too. So, I think, I respect the chair and her comments, and certainly there is a feeling that you want everybody to be able to afford the cost of living, the prices that have gone up, where we are. But I just don't think that we look enough at unintended consequences when we put these types of policies in place. And when you are asking a small business owner to take somebody from $12.80 to $15 in 1 year, decisions are going to be made, tough decisions are going to be made, and I do believe that there are unintended consequences, that people will lose their jobs, that employer will say, you know what, you do enough work, you have enough skill sets for a certain level of work, but not at this level. and people lose their jobs. We're seeing that everywhere. You know, you go into a grocery store now, convenience store now, there are fewer and fewer people behind the counters because automation can take over for what individuals have been doing before. Automation doesn't call in sick. Automation isn't subject to wage increases. Automation isn't subject to paid sick leave or Family Health Act. Automation is where businesses are going now, and the big businesses that are able to go that way are doing that. Small businesses don't have that opportunity as often to go to automation, and they only have so much money that they can spend on labor, and when we are forcing wage increases, again, I feel that there's going to be loss of jobs. So while $15 might be nice, $13.80 or 90 cents is a lot better than zero. So, Mr. President, I move support the amendment.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair Budget and Tax.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to reinforce the Chairwoman's point. When we passed the bill originally, we were in a different economic situation. It was pre-COVID. It was pre-job boom. It was pre-skill and job shortage. The reality is, as everybody knows, and when you walk down Main Street and you see the sign at one of the restaurants that says there's a worker shortage everywhere, be nice to the ones who showed up for work. The fact of the matter is that the bargaining power of labor has been dramatically changed over the past 2 years. Wages have gone up a lot. So the idea that this is the burden that it might have seemed 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we passed the minimum wage, the economy has changed. So I would just reinforce the Chairwoman's point that in a new situation we need to take a new approach. Oppose the amendment.
All right. On the amendment, the Chair recognizes the Senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we brought up COVID and the pandemic, when I think back at that time, what we were doing back in our districts, I know that what I was focused on was trying to help anybody who needed assistance with unemployment with that, but I also know I was trying to help all of those small businesses, especially the really small ones. And I'm talking about the ones that were operating at the margins before COVID hit. I'm talking about the ones in the Senator's amendment 14 people and less. We are changing the rules in the middle of the game for them. Some of them were barely making it before COVID. Then we come along with the schedule for the minimum wage increases. And then we come back and we're going to adjust that. And many of these small business operators, I have plenty of employers, and I know you all do in your district. They're actually fine with the minimum wage on the accelerated schedule because they're like, that's what we need to do to be competitive, and they can do that. We're not talking about those employers. We're talking about the really small ones, the ones that are barely making it, the ones that our local bankers, our community bankers went and stayed extra hours to help do their applications so they could get those PPP loans to basically make it so they could survive and support their families and their employees. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about changing the rules, accelerating on these really small business operators that need our support. And for that reason, I'm proud to support a green vote for this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. Are there any further additions to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 555 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another layover calendar, number 22. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 97, Senator Carter, Courts, Jury Service, Disqualification. Question is on the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the one committee amendment. On the one committee amendment, any discussion on the amendment? Minority Whip? Separate amendment?
The amendment is fine, Mr.
All
President.
right. On the amendment, any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The Favorable Committee report is amended, is adopted. Senator has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
the
President. I do have an amendment. It's this one here. That's okay. Yes, the amendment we adopted is an excellent amendment too. But we've adopted
doubling
it.
the joy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The amendment we adopted actually talks about, the committee adopted it, and it was something we worked on last year to make sure that the exemptions, this is allowing pretty much anybody to serve on a jury that's committed any crime, except for there's a couple exceptions that the committee did put on about a couple of different issues dealing with intimidating a witness, perjury, and there was another section of law dealing with basically dishonesty in court proceedings. I wanted to add to that this amendment here would just simply add to it. There's two issues that I think are also very relevant to jury. If you've been convicted of bribing a public official under 9-201 of the criminal law article, or if you've been convicted of bribing a juror under 9-202. I think both of those should be added as well, Mr. President. So I would ask for, I think it's a friendly amendment just to help improve the bill a little bit.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask the members to reject the amendment. It certainly doesn't do anything to improve the bill. I feel that the committee's been more than gracious to accept prior amendments that I believe are both irrelevant and frivolous and seek to actually diminish the bill and the integrity of the bill. This is a very, very important step. We're trying to right a wrong here. This is not acceptable, so please reject this amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say integrity. We're talking about integrity of the bill. I think it would help the integrity of this policy to not allow someone who has bribed a public official or bribed a juror to serve on a jury ever. And that's, I don't really know how else to say it if that's not good enough, but we're talking about the sacred responsibility, the right to vote, the right to the free speech. There's a right to serve on a jury trial as a juror, but it's also a sacred responsibility. So I just would like to move, I'm further moving my amendment, and I would ask for a roll call, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, Madam Floor Leader.
Once again, I just reiterate what I've said, what we've talked about before, the fact that every single jury selection process has something called voir dire. That is the process by which the two parties are able to weed out potential jurors that they don't find acceptable. And there are both challenges that there's no reason that you have behind the challenge. You just don't want the person. It doesn't have to be a reason. You are free to discriminate. And then there's other challenges that are for cause. And so it is my belief, it is our belief, that through that process, that's how we weed out. But I'd also just remind the body that a jury is supposed to be a cross-section of the community. That's what the Supreme Court has said for many, many decades. And that means all of the people in the community, the good, the bad, the ugly, those with warts and beauty marks alike. And so for those reasons, I'd ask that we not go any steps further and weed out any more people. And also, these particular crimes are so rare, they aren't even calculated in the Maryland State Police tracking. Bribery of a witness and bribery of a juror and an elected official. They are so rare that they're not even included in the stats. So I don't think that I think it's irrelevant and frivolous. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. The Senator has another amendment.
I do have one more amendment at the desk.
Distribute the amendment.
Thank you.
Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this does involve a little explanation because it talks about exempting people who've been convicted of a crime under Title IX, Subtitle 8 of the criminal law article. These are criminal gang offenses. And the last amendment talked about how they're such rare offenses that it's not even being tracked by the police or by the police database. Rare, it doesn't make sense to put in the bill. I think our criminal gang offenses are not rare and are a huge problem. And so I would move this amendment, Mr. President, to add this into the bill. And the reason it's relevant to juries, as opposed to, when we talk about the word frivolous, I didn't pick out things. I could have picked out all kinds of stuff in the criminal code to offer amendments on. I wasn't doing that. I was looking at what is relevant to jury. And a jury, that's why we have the other amendment in there, jury intimidation, witness intimidation. I thought the bribing of officials and a bribing of a juror was relevant, and I thought that this one was particularly relevant because gang activity is a scourge in our communities. Certain areas of the state are having a tougher time than others, but it's everywhere. And gang activity can reach into, we've seen it time and again, reaching into court proceedings. And so I just thought that would be a good addition to this bill to say if you've been convicted of a crime for criminal gang activities, that I would, I'd ask for it to be added. If it's not a friendly amendment, I would ask for a roll call, Mr. President.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, I'd also ask to reject this amendment. It's simply not necessary. One of the very first questions asked of potential jurors in the selection process is, do you know of or are you acquainted with any member here, any party, any of the attorneys, the defendant, or if it's a civil case, the parties in the civil case? And so I think that if there's any affiliation, that's going to be already weeded out in the selection process. In terms of anything else, this is about, first of all, it presumes that someone that has had once committed a crime or a bad act is forever going to be stained with it. And so the whole purpose of this bill, again, is to right those wrongs. I'd ask the body to reject the amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 97 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill. Oh, sorry, just kidding. That is the laid over bill, number 23. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 222, Senator Augustine, Environment, Reducing Packaging Materials, Producer Responsibility. Question is on the adoption of the 4 committee amendments in the favorable report.
All right, questions on the 4 committee amendments. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a very good extensive discussion about this earlier today, and I appreciate the floor leader and sponsor talking to us about and answering my questions. I do have an amendment that I'd like to offer.
If we, let's committee amendments first. Any discussion on the committee amendments? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question on the amended favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Senator has an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This part of this bill is these PROs, producer responsibility organizations. There are fees that get set as part of this bill. And so this amendment would just simply say that before establishing and collecting a fee, the office shall publish a proposed fee on its website and allow 90 calendar days for public comment. So that's the amendment, just a nice transparency for the public and for the producers. And so I would ask for the support of the committee and the support of the body. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, senators move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
We'll accept this as a friendly amendment.
All right, friendly amendment. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Time to stop while we're ahead. No, yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District has an amendment.
Yes, Mr. President, I have an amendment.
All right, Senator, the pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator, may I explain the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is not a friendly amendment, is certainly not a hostile amendment, and I really want to thank the floor leader and lead sponsor on the bill. This is an amendment just to allow for a study to see if manufacturers that create this material that can be recycled can be sold back to them. So it's just a feasibility study, and I hope it will be accepted.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
We'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
All right, a friendly amendment. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Senator has an amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yep, I have an amendment.
All right, Senator has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the amendment. All right, moving along. Senator may explain the amendment.
Okay, members of the Senate, this amendment, we worked on this in the committee, simply caps the total number of membership at 21, limits terms to 4 years, but members can be reappointed, and staggers the members' terms to provide continuity to the council. I move adoption of the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Are there any objections or discussion on the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 222 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Good work there. All right. Let's go to special order calendar.
Mr.
This is
President.
number, yes, Chair.
Would this be,
oh, sorry.
Would this be the appropriate time to mark my vote from one of the amendments, please? That
Yes, Senator.
I missed?
Yes.
I'd like to be shown in the green on amendment for SB 97, amendment number 883-520/1.
Okay, let's just double check. On 97.
Yep.
Amendment
883-520/1.
520. Senator wishes to be marked in the green. Please. In the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from District 1.
Mr. President, I think I may have gotten up too late, but Senate Bill 222, I had questions.
It is, we've moved it along. It's along. So, third reader. It'll be up tomorrow afternoon.
Can I request a mulligan?
Tomorrow you can. Reconsider. Yeah. All right. All right. Special order number 30. Number 30. Special order 30. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 585, Senator Hester, Career and Technical Education Committee alterations. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yes, Mr. President, there's been some additional considerations, and I'd like to send this back to committee.
All right. Senator moves to reconsider, recommit. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. So ordered. All right. We've got special order calendar number 32. Number 32. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 748, Senator Folden, Vehicle Laws, Military Vehicles, Registration and Operation. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report. On the report, let's take up the report first. Any discussion on the report? All right. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Senator from the 32nd District appears to have an amendment. Pages are going to collect and distribute. Just give us one moment to get it locked into the...
Thank you, Mr. President. While it's being distributed, can I make a couple comments?
Give us just a moment to get it up before so that it's up on the screens.
Thank you.
Senator may explain.
Thank you, Mr. President. So when I first saw this bill, military vehicles, I envisioned a big tank rolling down the road to get into a parade. Now, maybe that was not exactly what this military vehicle is. I can't tell from the bill because there's no weight limits. But as I really dug into it and read the testimony, I found a letter from the Maryland Department of Transportation where there were some significant concerns that weren't addressed in the legislation. And so this amendment addresses the concerns that that MVA, part of the Maryland Department of Transportation, stated. And one of the really big things is we call this an MV-C, but our whole motor vehicle system is based on 3 characters, not 4. So if we leave the bill this way, it's going to require that there be new programming at the motor vehicles for MV-C versus MVC. So one of the technical amendments is just to fix that. There's also an issue with the identification number. Some of these vehicles don't have identification numbers, but one can be assigned. The motor vehicle suggests that it be assigned by a state or local jurisdiction, that it have the proper number of digits and alphanumeric numbers, because if it's less than that, it will be a problem in the recording it. And then it should say on limited access highways, which is 35 miles or less. And so that was not in the bill, but that was something that the motor vehicles requires. And we do that on a lot of bills where we say 35 miles or less, like with golf carts, when we pass those bills, or speed cameras. It's always on a highway of 35 miles or less. So this is really an amendment that does some clarification and technical amendment. I move the amendment, please.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would urge the body to resist this amendment, as this was a hearing that was done in front of the Judicial Proceedings Committee where all these concerns were addressed. The classification of the vehicles, and I appreciate the Senator's purpose and her desire on these amendments, but they're just not founded. The MVA came forward with theirs about the 35 miles an hour prior to the consideration that all these vehicles met the federal motor vehicle safety guidelines that are already in place, which is what the committee voted upon. Additionally, the striking of the MV-C, this was never an issue that was brought forward, and this is an ability for them to make that adjustment within the transportation or in MVA's computer coding. And the final issue that was brought forward was, I apologize, Mr. President, I never saw these amendments until just now, so it was really appreciate the opportunity to be prepared. What was the last amendment, ma'am?
It's well,
Senator?
I think the senator. Let's do the maker of the amendment. If we could just one last explanation on the final provision.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's see, the MV-C changing the maximum speed limit to 35 miles an hour, and the assignment of the motor vehicle. And it's interesting because this.
Well, Senator, actually, we'll yield for a second. The senator had the floor. We'll come back to the floor.
So, as I understand her concerns, they've all been addressed through, it was the unique identifier. All these vehicles already come with a unique identifier. Some of these vehicles, if they were manufactured in a different post-1977 in a different country, in this country, all vehicles are required to have a 17-character identifier. This was one of the issues that MVA was having, and they reconciled it that as long as the vehicle had a unique identifier, regardless of its manufacturer location, that passing this legislation would allow these vehicles to be registered, because this was one of the inherent issues with it. So it meets all federal motor vehicle safety standards. It as well has a unique vehicle identifier, and with that, I would urge the body to resist the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. On the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? Chair recognizes the senator from Charles County is on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the maker of the amendment.
Will the senator yield to a question?
Okay.
Senator may proceed.
So, Senator, you mentioned a tank rolling down the street. I missed the relation to a tank rolling down the street and this bill.
Thank you, Senator. I'm not sure what a military vehicle C is. I mean, it's a military vehicle collector item, but it doesn't describe the weight or anything about this vehicle. So it could be any military vehicle that apparently is that will be designated MVC.
Yeah, up to and including a tank.
Could. It doesn't have any weight limits in the bill.
Okay. And, thank you for that, Senator. And another question on the 35 miles per hour. What's the context for that 35 miles per hour line in the amendment?
Mr. President, if I can answer that.
Certainly.
So the 35 miles per hour is the letter that came from MDOT that said MVA guidelines also recommend that military vehicles repurposed for civilian purchase should be barred from operation on all limited access highways, and they only be allowed to operate on roads with a maximum speed limit of 35 miles per hour. Senate Bill 748 does provide limits on use, such as banning everyday use and for purposes as transporting passengers, but it does not address this AAMVA guideline.
Okay. So, thank you for that, Senator. So, this amendment, these military vehicles would not be allowed to be on roads that have a speed limit over 35 miles per hour.
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Noes have it. The senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title?
I guess I should have asked for a roll call, Mr. President, because this side of the room was certainly saying yes. I do have some other amendments.
Senator has amendment?
Let me see which one I want to do.
Pages will collect and distribute the amendment.
Yeah. So
give us just a moment, just a moment.
Okay.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this, in the bill talks about there will be an inspection, one inspection. This amendment just simply says it will be an annual inspection and that the vehicle can't be driven more than 250 miles annually. And so you wouldn't know if it's being driven in daily use or with, passengers or, all the things that are outlined in the bill unless somebody's checking the mileage, the odometer on a regular basis. So the amendment does say it would be inspected annually with limited mileage, 250 miles a year.
All right.
And I'd like a roll call vote, Mr. President.
Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Mr. President, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the senator's amendment. I would urge the body to resist this amendment because this vehicle and the purpose behind this is so that our veterans and veteran organizations can have these vehicles, not tanks. They have to be legally inspected by the state of Maryland. They have to pass the inspection. They have to meet the same criteria of being insured. They meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards, which is all part of this bill. And limiting it to 250 miles when they go to these different exhibitions like in Ocean City or in Anne Arundel County where they celebrate Veterans Day parades. If you drive back and forth, you wouldn't even be able to drive from Frederick County to Ocean City and back, and you would already have your maximum limit of mileage. And this is not what this bill is about. This is about the idea of being able to celebrate our veterans, their service to our country, and their dedication to keeping this land free. And with that, I would reject this amendment and ask for.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th District.
Will the sponsor of the amendment
Will the
yield
maker
for
of the
a
amendment
question?
yield? Senator may proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the inspection. Who is going to do the inspection annually?
The inspection's already in the bill.
The one of them.
Well,
Initial.
There is an inspection, right?
So the initial. Just like if I go out now and I buy a car, I have to have it inspected. Correct?
Correct.
But I don't have to have my car inspected anymore, as long as I keep the registration.
Well, you do have to have your missions done every 2 years.
Well, missions, but I just pull up and plug into the OVB or OVS, whatever they call that. But there is no inspection.
I'm going to go back to the bill, Senator. It does tell us who inspects it in the bill. I don't know the bill.
But where I'm going with this is they're going to have to go back every year and have this thing inspected. Normally it costs, I think, a minimum I've seen for inspections like $55 or $75.
Well, this pays a one-time tag fee of $51. We could make it an annual fee of $51, and that could pay for the inspection. It just says that the military vehicle shall provide proof acceptable to the administration that the vehicle has passed a safety inspection. So the administration has not developed that safety inspection yet, just that they will in consultation with the state police.
So I'm pretty sure it's the same as the vehicle inspection anybody else gets. My issue is you're going to have to go back in for annual inspections every year that we currently don't do for our own cars. I just find that to be a problem, so thank you. But I will kind of follow up what the Senator said, talking about the mileage, 250 miles. Parades are a big thing in our districts, 4th of July and others. And you have people that might want to go from, I live in Harford County, and, Bel Air is a big parade. Somebody might live in Carroll County who's going to drive all the way out to bring their Humvee or their Deuce and a Half for the parade. One parade, you can't go to another one. I think that the mileage is way too small for this. I understand your concerns, but again, this is, it's for, as he said, the veteran organizations, and it's, you're going to limit these in parades for 4th of July and St. Patrick's Day and everything else that people do want to celebrate. So that's why I'll be supporting or against this amendment.
All right. Any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City, followed by the senator from Baltimore County and Carroll County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just confused. I just want to ask some questions. I was looking through the bill. Maybe it's to the floor leader or the sponsor of whoever. They were saying that this was for military organizations. Are there any restrictions on who can own?
Well, let's just double check here. We're to the maker of the amendment or to the bill sponsor center?
Answer that. Mr. President, that was my question. It doesn't say here
Senator
that.
may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This doesn't say that it needs to be owned by a military organization or a veteran. It can be owned by anyone. So there's not a limit. Maybe that's an amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. All right. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the maker of the amendment.
Let's maker of the amendment yield.
I just quickly typed in on my computer, asked the distance between Frederick and Ocean City. It's 183 miles. So if someone from Frederick wants to enter their vehicle in the Ocean City Veterans Day Parade, they wouldn't be able to get it back to Frederick. Is it your idea that they would take it back maybe as far as Salisbury and find a place in Salisbury to store it for the winter until the next year and then could return it to Frederick?
Mr. Senator, it would take more miles than that because they won't be able to drive on 50. They have to do the limited roads. It doesn't particularly say in the bill that it should say 35 miles or less.
All right, so maybe they don't get it back as far as Salisbury, maybe Berlin?
Maybe they don't even make it to Ocean City. And maybe 250 isn't enough, but I have a concern that these vehicles are going to get tagged. They're going to pay $51 forever. They don't ever go back and pay another tag renewal. Take these heavy vehicles on the roads and drive them whenever they want because there's no one checking. There's no one checking. So they can be doing, a parade in Cumberland and one in Frederick and one in Harford County and one in, wherever. They're going to be on the roads, using our roads for a one-time tag fee of $51.
So is it the purpose of your amendment to prevent veterans from entering their vehicles in Veterans Day parades? Is that what this is about?
Senator, that's not my intention. But this doesn't say anything about veterans. This bill does not address veterans at all.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Question is on the bill, or excuse me, on the amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded the amendment? Recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Senate Bill 748 having received, is ordered printed for third reader. All right, next we have Special Order Calendar number 33. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 508, Senator Elfreth, Hemp Farming Program, Use of Hemp and Hemp Products and Consumable Products. Question is on the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable report.
Chair recognizes the minority whip on the committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, we did a lot of talking in the last 24 hours, and I think we've figured out we don't need any more amendments. So
right.
I want to thank the chairman, both chairmen, and also working with some other folks and the sponsors. So we're good to go.
The bill comes in just under the limit. Yeah, All right, on the two amendments. Any discussion? Any? Thank you, thank you. Any objections? Any objections to two committee amendments? Not all. Two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 508 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, are we ready with the amendment on the special ordered bill? Let's take that one up. The clerk will read the special order bill. This is, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Senate Bill 708, Shared Use Proceedings, Public Health, Youth Camps, Development, Organizations, Programs, Criminal History Records, Checks.
All right, we're on the report. Do we want to do the report first? And then the amendment? Okay, on the report, any discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. The chair has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the bill calls for a background check for folks to be working at these youth camps, and it doesn't have a specific date by which the results of that check would have to be given to the camp. So this just says within 3 business days to ensure that the camps can move forward with either hiring decisions and get on with their business. So I'd move for the adoption of the amendment.
All right, the floor leader moves the amendment. Any objections? Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 708 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, Madam Clerk, if we could ring the bells. And if we could do a quorum call before third reading calendar.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We have third reading calendar number, this is consent calendar number 1. Clerk will read the calendar.
Senate third reading calendar number 27, consent number 1. Bills are on third reading for final passage.
All right, this is consent calendar number 1. Senators, please take a look at the bills. Are there any bills that senators wish to separate and vote separately? If not, they are on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, bills on consent calendar number 1 having received a constitutional majority are declared passed. We've got third reading calendar number 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 31, Senator Carter, Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners, Student Members, and Task Force to Study Compensation and Student Members, third reading.
All right, Senate Bill 31 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bills 31 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 62, Senator Augustine, Land Use Public Service Companies, Pollinator-Friendly Vegetation Management, and Utility Designated Pollinator Areas.
Senate Bill 62 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 62 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 112, Senator Kagan, State Finance, Procurement, Grants, Prompt Payment Requirement, third reading.
Senate Bill 112 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 112 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 140, Senator Jackson, State Highway Administration, Fallen Heroes, Fishing Creek Bridge.
Senate Bill 140 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 140, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 213, Senator Ellis, Health Occupations, Clinical Nurse Specialist, Prescribing.
Senate Bill 213 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 213, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 271, Senator Reedy, Education Maryland Civic Excellence Program, established.
Senate Bill 271 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 271, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 302, Senator Mounts, Talbot County Board of Education, Election of Officers.
Senate Bill 302 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 302, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 354, Senator Guile, Income Tax Checkoff, Maryland Veterans Trust Fund.
Senate Bill 354 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 354, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 375, Senator Ellis, State Board of Physicians, inactive in emeritus status.
Senate Bill 375 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 375, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 402, Senator Hershey, Kent County Board of Education, student member.
Senate Bill 402 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 402, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 414, Senator Augustine, Commission to Advance and Strengthen Firefighting Emergency Medical Services within Maryland.
Senate Bill 414 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 414, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 434, Senator Klossmeyer, Natural Resources Restorative Aquaculture Pilot Program.
Senate Bill 434 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 434, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 445, Senator Hayes, Appraisal Gap from Historic Redlining Financial Assistance Program alterations.
Senate Bill 445 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 445, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. We've got calendar 29. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 448, Senator Guile, Alcoholic Beverages Manufacturer's License and Off-Site Permits.
Senate Bill 448 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 41 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 448, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 449, Senator Guile, Maryland Audiology, Hearing Aid Dispensing, Speech Language Pathology, and Music Therapy Act definitions and application.
Senate Bill 449 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 449, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 454, Senator Alfred, State Police Retirement System, Law Enforcement Officers Pension System, and Judges Retirement Systems serving state benefits, same-sex spouses.
Senate Bill 454 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 454 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 471, Senator Alpha, sediment control plans, discharge permits for stormwater associated with construction activity, notice and comment requirements.
Senate Bill 471 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 471, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 482, Senator Lewis Young, Janet Hoffman, Loan Assistance Repayment Program, Mental Health Professions in Public Schools.
Senate Bill 482 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 482, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 496, Senator Kramer, Commercial Financing Transactions.
Senate Bill 496 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 496, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 517, Cecil County Senators, Port of Deposit State Historical Park Planning.
Senate Bill 517 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 517, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 524, Senator McKay, Garrett County Board of County Commissioners meetings.
Senate Bill 524 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 524, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 545, Senator Muse, towing or removal of vehicles, reclamation hours.
Senate Bill 545 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 545, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. On to number 30. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 550, the President, Financial Regulation, Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund Establishment, Access to Banking Act.
Senate Bill 550 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 37 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 550, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 554, the President, Maryland National Guard TRICARE Premium Reimbursement Program, Establishment Healthcare for Heroes Act of 2023.
Senate Bill 554 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 554, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 560, Senator Gazzoni, Animal Testing and Research, Human Relevant Research Funding, and Animal Testing and Research Contributions.
Senate Bill 560 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 37 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 560, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 589, Senator Hayes, Baltimore City, Alcoholic Beverages Related Event Promoters Permit.
Senate Bill 589 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 589, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 620, Senator Heddleman, Institution of Higher Education, Sports Wagering Contracts Prohibition.
Senate Bill 620 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 620, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 634, Senator Mouts, Natural Resources, Oyster Inspection, Severance Taxes Increase.
Senate Bill 634 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 634, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 661, the President Unemployment Insurance Tax Parity for Delayed Payments of Benefits.
Senate Bill 661 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 661, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 686, Senator Smith, Civil Action, Child Sexual Abuse, Definitions, Damages, Statute of Limitations, the Child Victims Act of 2023.
Senate Bill 686 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District has 2 minutes to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the risk of interrupting the roll we're on, and at the risk of becoming known as the State Senate's constitutional scold, I have to speak up. I voted, we spent a lot of time in our committee dealing with the constitutionality of this bill. We had a long briefing at the very beginning of the session. It lasted several hours in our committee, all dealing with the constitutionality of this bill. There are serious questions with constitutionality. I've read the various authorities. I'm absolutely convinced that this bill will also be held to be unconstitutional. And when I voiced that opinion at the voting session of our committee, the Baltimore Sun took it down, and then they asked the professor from the University of Maryland Law School, who advised us all session about this, and her response was, she's not 100% certain that the bill is unconstitutional. Now, talk about damning it with faint praise. This is the person who has been advocating the entire session that we should pass this bill, and her statement to the Sun is she's not 100% certain that the bill is unconstitutional. The answer is the bill is unconstitutional, and it will be so held. As I said before, I took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Maryland. I will not vote for a bill which I believe is unconstitutional. That's this bill. I'm going to vote red.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 686, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District.
Yes, Mr. President, on SB 550, I don't think my button worked. It would be a no.
550 in the red.
And on SB 454, go from nay to yay.
One more time, 554?
I'm sorry, 454.
454 from green to red.
No,
red
from
to green.
nay to yay.
Nay to yay, yes. All right. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. We'll go to Senator from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Senate Bill 634, I'd like to go from green to red, and on Senate Bill 448, from red to green.
634. And second one more time, just to make sure we have it.
Second one was Senate Bill 448, red to green.
We have that, Madam Clerk. All right, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from District 9.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Senate Bill 112 in the green.
112 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator District 29.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 448 from red to green.
448 from red to green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, we got one more. This is number 31. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 719, Chair, Education, Energy, the Environment, Public Safety, State Fuel Security Program.
Senate Bill 719 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 719, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 722, Chair, Budget and Tax, State Department of Assessment and Taxation, Mandatory Retirement Age Repeal.
Senate Bill 722 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 722, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 723, Chair, Budget and Taxation, Cooperations and Associations, Electronic Copy Fields, repeal.
Senate Bill 723 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 723, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 733, Carroll County Senators, Carroll County, County Commissioners, Districts, alterations.
Senate Bill 733 is on third reading for final passage. Senators, this is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 733, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 793, Central West Consumer Protection Motor Vehicle Glass Repair or Replacement Advanced Driver Assistance Recalibration.
Senate Bill 793 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 793, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 806, Senator Kelly, Maryland Health Benefit Exchange and Maryland Department of Health Care and Dental Coverage for Undocumented Immigrants.
Well, that's not right.
No.
Don't know how that... No, okay. It must be pulling from the computer. No, it's all right. All right, Senate Bill 806 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion?
Yeah, I can't change it.
Let's just make sure it's not...
Can we just do a sponsor change?
As the great Scooby-Doo once said, ruh-roh.
Mr. President, we need to document the senator.
Yes, we are. The issue is that this was the former senator's bill that then amended, but it was in the only way to add it in is from the amendment for the current name. So we are going to. We're sure we can move it forward. Let's do this. Let's take it up tomorrow, just to make sure. Let's double check. Let's get it right. We got to do it third reader, full version. You make sure. Let's get it right. So. Chair recognizes the senator for the Democratic Caucus Chair as a motion.
Yeah, I was just thinking it over. I think we should special order for the appropriate time tomorrow.
All right. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 822, Senator McKay, Pathways and Technology Early College High School Program, High School Diplomas, PTEC.
All right. Senate Bill 822 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 822, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 838, Senator Kramer, Workplace Fraud and Prevailing Wage Violations Referrals.
Senate Bill 838 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 35 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 838, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 842, Senator Kramer, Maryland Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Senate Bill 842 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 842, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Senators, the desk is clear. It is entirely clear. That's pretty impressive. I did not think that was going to happen tonight, so that is a good sign. That's a good sign. Any announcements? Finance Committee.
Good evening, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Finance will meet at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning for a voting session.
9:30, all right. Nope. B&T? 11, I think, 11.
Thank you, Mr. President. Budget and Tax will meet for voting at 10:30.
10:30, all right. Chair of Judicial Proceedings?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for a voting session.
9:30 a.m., excellent, all right.
Session's at 11, is that right, Mr. President?
At 11.
Yeah.
At 11.
Just,
yes, Chair,
just to clarify, tomorrow, it's firm that it's a two-session?
I would say 95% sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
95% confidence level. We only polled 600, we didn't poll 1,000, you know. So, all right. No one else got that one. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other announcements, standing committee announcements, select committee announcements, caucuses? Yes, delegations. Yes, Chair of the Baltimore City Delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Baltimore City Delegation will meet tomorrow morning virtually at 8 a.m.
8 a.m. It continues. Somehow, some way, 8 a.m. All right. Additional delegations? Any other delegations? Any other announcements for the good of the order? All right. We just ask if the body would, if there are no objections, that we adjourn tonight in honor of Diana Gibson, the wife of Larry Gibson, who tragically passed away yesterday, and just after, I believe, almost 49 years of marriage, I believe. He was my elections law professor. He was just down here for the Thurgood Marshall. Just two people that loved each other more than anything. Super, super, super sad, very sudden. So if we could adjourn in Diana Gibson's honor tonight. With that, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Friday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, at 11 a.m. in honor of Diana Gibson.
Without objection, so ordered. Be safe. Have a great evening, everyone. See you tomorrow.